The Central Bank of Nigeria has a new governor, Olayemi Cardoso, including 4 other new deputy governors who have been screened and confirmed by the Senate. In his first major policy statement, Cardoso said the CBN is looking to grow the size of the Nigerian economy to a staggering value of $1 trillion in gross domestic product in the next 8 years. Omo Bazwaye reports.
Nigeria's economy is in dire straits, and the country looks up to a Harvard-trained finance expert, Olayemi Michael Cardoso, to help navigate its monetary and financial policies out of trouble following his screening and confirmation by the Senate. His nomination and confirmation comes on the heels of the emergency resignation by the former CBN Governor, Godwin Emefiele, according to the Senate President, Godswill Akpabio.
With the information of the emergency resignation from office of the Governor of Central Bank and the 4 deputies, we cannot allow a vacuum. So the Senate had to resume today to try to sort this out for the interest of all Nigerians.
But no letter of resignation from Emefiele was read or made available to senators or journalists during the Senate session. Olayemi comes highly recommended for the job and conscious of the responsibility he lays before the Senate a staggering target of lifting the size of Nigeria's economy to $1 trillion in gross domestic product, GDP.
The economic policy proposals of the administration identify a set of fiscal reforms and growth targets that will achieve a $1 trillion GDP within 8 years.
For many here, Cardoso's target is achievable, but he must quickly fix the economic indices that seem stuck high against Nigeria and which have left his economy in a hard place.
I think there are lots of jobs to do. Like I said, the variables are very weak. Economic variables are very weak. And it is when you work on those variables that you can recover the economy.
It's heavy, I agree with you, but the most important thing is what are the resources that are available in Nigeria? Can Nigeria meet up with that? And the answer is yes.
The biggest concern of the day is a badly beaten naira in the foreign exchange market, with the currency struggling at its lowest ebb in years at 1,000 naira to the US dollar.
I will want a situation where we can put a caveat on every demand of forex to sign a memorandum of understanding with EFCC or any of our institutions for them to have a code that grants the agency to verify, and everything that relates to that importation will have that code.
Also confirmed by the Senate are 4 deputy governors for the Central Bank of Nigeria to assist the new governor in revamping Nigeria's monetary policies. Senators say a major challenge is rising inflation and supply of money, which the new CBN governor said accounts for 50% of Nigeria's pre-rallying inflation that currently stands at roughly 24%. Another major concern is the issue of deficit financing, which the CBN says it hopes to tackle side by side with the fiscal managers of the economy. Cardoso, who is Nigeria's 12th CBN governor, is promising a new institution that will play by the rules, do things differently, and stay away from the murky waters of politics. Omo Bazwaye, Arise News.
Joining us now on the morning show is Johnson Chukwu, an economist and chief executive officer at Cowry Asset Management Limited. Good morning and welcome to the morning show.
Good morning, Naya, and thank you for having me. Good morning, Dr. Ruben Abati and Dr. Rufai Oseni.
Morning, sir. Morning, sir.
Hi, Chief. Johnson Chukwu.
Your Excellency, sir.
Thank you for joining us. Okay. Olayemi Cardoso and 4 others appeared yesterday. Governor, deputy governors, designate, and they've now been confirmed. And what Mr. Cardoso, the new CBN governor, said is that there's going to be a reset. There's going to be evidence-based approach to monetary policies, whatever that means. And that also there will be measures, short-term, long-term, medium-term, long-term. And this will include addressing balance of payments, will include addressing forex issues, diversifying the economy, working with the fiscal side, and ensuring that in the long run, GDP growth will be about 1 trillion within 8 years. I said earlier before you joined us that these are just textbook talk. Anybody, Ayo, could have gone there and she would say the same things and should be confirmed. But you are the expert. What do you think?
Well, once again, thank you for having me. I think Dr. Cardoso and the 4 deputy governors have an unenviable job on their hand. Like you rightly said, these are soundbites that are quite interesting to the ears. But the heavy lifting, they say the devil is in the details. The job they need to do, they are limited tools at their disposal to achieve those things they mentioned. A lot of things at the central bank that will be done in the economy will be dependent on what the fiscal authorities do. If you look at the major responsibility of the central bank, there are 2 major responsibilities: price stability and financial system stability. On financial system stability, yes, it's basically an enclosed or an open-ended job for them because the entire financial system report to them. They are the apex financial regulatory authority. But when it comes to issues around price stability, too many variables are at play. If you take the 3 components of price stability, you look at the issue of interest rates. The interest rate environment should be dependent on the inflation rate, because ordinarily they tell you in a good economy you should have a positive net effective interest rate, so that your interest rate should be higher than the inflation rate. But an inflation rate of 25.8%, can you really charge interest rate above inflation rate? And then that takes you to inflation rate. Can they control that? To control the inflation today, you have to control the exchange rate, you have to control food production, and those 2 components are the major pressures we have on our inflation rate. Exchange rate pass-through effect. Today, to control the exchange rate, which is the 3rd component of the price stability, control the exchange rate, you have to control either capital importation or with your export earnings. Can you control the export earnings if you cannot control your crude production? Crude production is basically at the footsteps of the executive arm of government. So I think they are limited by the structural defects of the economy in terms of what they intend to do. You may have the best of intention, but you have to look at what are the tools at my disposal and what is the environment I'm operating. The environment today requires a lot of effectiveness in leadership and management from the executive arm of government to make the monetary authority effective in managing the price levels as well as managing the financial system.
Absolutely. All right. Now, one of the things during the questioning that the new CBN governor assured the Senate was that the CBN would be independent. And we've had challenges around this in the past, especially with the interference of the executive, the president. Is that possible? You know, under this new administration, the fact that the CBN governor was nominated by the president has oversight, they have a relationship, long before now. Is it possible for the CBN and the CBN governor to be truly independent?
I think that would be a tall call. I don't know whether you listened to Senator Adams Oshimole's comment in the course of clearing the CBN governor. He made it clear that the central bank or the monetary authority should work hand in hand with the fiscal authorities, that they no longer want to have an invisible market force. They want to have a personal or individual personalized intervention. So what does that mean? You could have, because if he is one of the major people in the party in governance, then you could be leading the opinion of the party from what he said. But beyond that, you also look at the process of appointing the central bank governor. The central bank governor is known to have previously been appointed into the executive of Lagos State government. So there is a personal relationship with the president and the CBN governor. But beyond that, you also look at the circumstances that preceded the exit of the 2 immediate past central bank governors. They were all both removed in ignominy. And that sends a message to whoever is sitting on that desk, that you are sitting on a hot stool, and despite the legal or documentary, let me use that, documentary independence that you have, that somebody can wake up in the middle of the night and suspend you and send you to detention. So those two factors, or three factors, are factors that make it difficult for anybody to believe that the central bank governor in Nigeria, in the immediate, will be independent. We need to get to a point where the laws are amended to make it difficult for the central bank governor to be suspended by the president. Because that suspension may not necessarily be driven by national interest. It could be driven by disagreements. As long as they have that power to suspend you and then appoint somebody in your state, you really can be independent.
Let's talk about the integrity of the central bank. We're at a nadir as we speak. From a central bank that in 2013, as Central Bank Governor Sanusi won the best central banker, to a central bank today that the president went out in France and said the central bank is rotten. There's been some talk in the business community that even our foreign partners with the central bank are beginning to ask questions that can they trust our central bank, some of the top banks that we know about. How can we restore that trust owing to what is happening? And as we speak, the central bank is still being investigated. Well, also to add to that, as of today, like our correspondent said, we have not even seen the letter of resignation. It was not read in the House. We just know that the former central bank governor...
We just heard
that the former central bank governor resigned. All of this impugns on our central bank.
Okay, let's start the issue of integrity. My understanding of integrity is that integrity is ascribed to an institution or to an individual when the actions of that institution align absolutely with their statements. So, to now ascribe integrity to the incoming CBN executive, you have to look at what is their intention, what are their roles, what are their functions. Are they executing functions in tandem with what the law says? And do they walk their talk? Once you say, I'm coming here by 9:30 a.m. and you come here by 9:45 a.m., you lack integrity. Because I can't trust your word. That simply means, can I trust your word? Can I take your statement to the bank? And what we have had is instances where the central bank, at some instances, breached the trust of the society. The hallmark of it from the immediate past administration of the central bank was the Naira denomination, or the Naira rebranding, or whatever we call it. You see, it was a situation where one of the roles of the central bank was breached, maintaining smooth flow of financial transactions. So you have this situation where people had balances in their banks and they couldn't withdraw them. And that impeached at the core of the central bank, the trust people, the society had on the central bank. Then you had the issue of ways and means funding, where the central bank disbursed to the federal government more than 27.3 trillion naira. They breached the Fiscal Responsibility Act. And that's where we talk of integrity. You had an act that says you cannot grant more than a percentage of the previous year's federal government revenue.
5%?
Yes, to the government. 2, before you grant further accommodation to the federal government, they must have cleared the previous year's outstanding. And then you continue to breach it. So that's why the central bank lost trust. We had a central bank that was declaring to us the reserve that was not representative of the net reserve. And then gave us the illusion we had money. And then we also had a central bank that had multiple exchange rates. And they were disbursing funds to those who they preferred at a very low exchange rate. So those are the factors that came together to make people begin to doubt the integrity of the central bank. So for you to now say, central bank, restore that integrity, they have to walk their talk. And they must align absolutely with what the law says. the issue of accommodation for the federal government, the issue of FX regulation, because these things are very fluid. Particularly the FX regulation, where it has been used to feather the nest of those who have access to power. The issues around even management of cash reserve. At some point, the management of cash reserve became so opaque that the banks could not say, this is exactly what I expect to be debited, or this is when my excess cash reserve will be released. So a lot of things have to happen for us to say, look, the new administration in the central bank has restored confidence. It's all about they must walk their talk.
Okay, Mr. Cardoso talked about transparency. He said it's only when the Central Bank of Nigeria is transparent that you can promote stakeholder involvement. And that's linked to the point about trust that you just talked about. How transparent can the Central Bank of Nigeria be? That's one question. The second issue that Yemi Cardoso talked about yesterday is that, he will align, he will work actively with the fiscal side. Now, if you look at the fiscal side, so what are we likely to get under this Tinubu administration? Is it a party, Lagos, rub my back, I rub your back kind of a connection, considering the fact that on the fiscal side, the people there are also of the same camp politically as Yemi Cardoso. Third question. Okay, I have so many questions about it. He was asked whether he will get involved in politics, like his predecessor. I think it was Senate President Godswill Akpabio that raised that question. If you could just touch on those three issues quickly.
Like you said, you have to believe this in your head. Do you think I will have a doctorate degree like you? Okay, let's start from the first aspect of the question, which is transparency. If the central bank leadership has to be transparent, a couple of things they need to do. They need to put the public space, the implementation, I use the word implementation of their policies. One of which I had said that, look, the FX management has been a cookie jar where people put their hand and take from the public treasury. Now, we are now talking of Nigerian interbank foreign exchange market, NIFEX. The question is that there is still allocation. Which banks get what? Can we publish the allocations on a bank-by-bank basis and possibly drill down to individual letters of credit that are honored, individual Form A that are honored? Then, because the transparency in FS management will put a lie or confirm their level of transparency. The other aspect is that the previous central bank management failed to publish the audited financial statement of the bank for more than 5 years. And this is an institution that requires every bank to render quarterly, monthly returns. The central bank today has access to a bank's activities, financial position on a daily basis. And the same institution could not even abide by annual publication of their audited statements. So can we have a central bank that will publish to the country for the public consumption the quarterly financial status of the country, the half-yearly financial status of the country, and then if the central bank is transparent in the course of publication of their financial positions, if the central bank is transparent in terms of FS management, then it is possible that we can ascribe transparency to the new leadership of the central bank. The other aspect is that they say they work. The second question is that they work hand in hand with the fiscal authority. We must recognize this. There's actually nothing wrong with working collaboratively with the fiscal authority. What is wrong is being subservient to the fiscal authority and taking orders that override the primary objective of the monetary authorities. Issues around disbursement of accommodation, ways and means funding of the fiscal authority without abiding by the instant laws. The key thing is that there should be an economic management team that will encompass the fiscal authority and the monetary authorities. And then certain things are discussed so that the two managers of the economy do not work in opposite direction. If you want to encourage productive activities, you have to introduce or allow some level of accommodative policies, both at the fiscal side and the monetary side. You cannot have accommodative fiscal policies where you have an expansionary budget and you frustrate it with a restrictive monetary policy where you take back that money and then lead to high interest rate. So that level of understanding must happen. Which direction do we want to focus on? Do we now say, okay, let's for momentarily ignore issue of inflation and grow the economy? Or do we say, let's apply the brakes, fight inflation, and slow down productive activities? The two must work hand in hand. The third question you asked is that would he go into politics? I believe you said his answer was no. The truth is that he is the only one who can tell us that. We can only hold him accountable to whatever commitment he has made to the National Assembly. But we need to go beyond that as a country and make sure that if there's a lacuna that the immediate past central bank governor latched on to, go into politics, we need to close it constitutionally. So that no central bank governor will have the latitude to go and contest for any elective position, even in local government chairperson, while they are on that stool. The day they begin to dream of that, the immediate past central governor went to court and said, look, he actually obtained an APC membership card, which meant he was a card-carrying member of a political party, which will cloud his judgment when it comes to dishing out unbiased policies.
Absolutely. Well, he's meant to be a political, and Dr. Cardoso had assured Nigerians and the House that he was going to be political. But something else I observed during his questioning yesterday was the way he responded to the senators. You know, very subdued, very respectful, very. He was able to respond to questions as if they had the right, and they do have the right to question him. But we saw what happened in the past once they take office. And then they're summoned by the Senate Committee on Finance, Insurance, and other banks, finance, and insurance, and other institutions, and they refused to appear before the House. They refused to come to answer questions. This happened also during the Naira redenomination you talked about, whereby the Senate had said they were going to invite the CBN Governor, and he didn't show up. How do we, you talk about the fact that there shouldn't be a lacuna to enable him pick up a political form or join a political party. How about governance, accountability, checking, especially from the Senate? How do we ensure that the CBN governor doesn't become too big to be able to answer questions like he did yesterday? I hope I can. We need to remind them on the day when they go for screening, and then when they get into office, and then all of a sudden they're not answerable to many people except perhaps the president.
A couple of things happened in the immediate past government, one of which was we saw a lot of lacuna in the effectiveness of the presidents. And that created hydras that should obtain in any society. So you had senior vice presidents who were sometimes even more powerful than the vice president, the elected vice president. And such people became...
Did you say senior vice president?
Yeah, we had effectively...
So unofficial senior vice president.
Quote and unquote, senior vice presidents who became more powerful than the vice president. And what happened was, like I said, the absolute power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So, and that's why every organization must have a corporate governance structure that puts checks and balances on people who have executive authority. And I think I had mentioned this in one program in your studio, in your station, that we need to now come up with a system where the central bank governor is subject to regular briefing and regular updates, regular term of assessment, by the National Assembly. So if he has to come every 6 months to brief the National Assembly and take questions on what he's doing, and then they pose questions to him on what he's not doing well. And there has to be some level of accountability. There has to be some level of performance targets.
Yes.
And those performance targets must be monitored. And whoever is occupying that position should know if he's failing consistently to achieve the performance target, there is a repercussion. So if you don't do that, the person begins to grow so powerful. And that's what we call success hubris. You think you have succeeded in doing this so many times that you think you can't fail. And then you begin to do things in a lackadaisical manner. So we must build structures and checks and balances to prevent that from happening. Let me share an experience with you. Yesterday I flew in late in the night. We were about taking off. We had taxied to the runway when there was heavy downpour in Abuja. And then the pilot waited. After some time, he said we were going back to the hangar. We drove back to the hangar. And then as we got back to the hangar, he now announced that, look, he had seen a window to take off. And they permitted him to take off. But you're going to take it off in the opposite direction. When we took off, you can imagine the turbulence. So people were shouting, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. So at some point, when we stabilized, when we passed through the clouds, one of the cabin crew members announced to us that we're just breaking through the cloud and we're not to worry about. So he came to me and showed me a picture of the clouds we are navigating through. And he told me, I said, look, could this have brought the aircraft? He said, no. That what has happened is because the European, the Western people, the Western world, have the level of advancement in aero technology is such that no matter the thickness of the cloud, it can bring down an aircraft. But the last time a such turbulence brought an aircraft was 1967 and it was Egypt Air. That what has happened that current technology is such that there's no matter, no amount of turbulence or cloud that the plane can run into and they bring down. What am I trying to bring out is that, analogous to what we're saying, we have seen failings and failures in the past administration of the central bank. We should identify those things, chronicle them, find out what went wrong, and build checks and balances to prevent it from happening again. Otherwise, they will still happen.
Absolutely.
I mean, very well said. In the last dispensation, the CBN did a lot of development work. In fact, Dr. Bati used to make a joke that very soon the CBN would tell you how much to give your wife. Because anchor borrowers, CBN, all sorts of projects CBN. At a point, the CBN was pretty much running the Ministry of Agric and other things. But in coming in, Mr. Cardozo said we are not going to do any of that again. But as he was saying that, there's a story in the paper saying that one of the airline operators was saying that the CBN too should consider them when it comes to, Forex because of the challenges and all of that. And we all remember how the CBN intervened, even when the cost of aviation fuel went up. And the CBN said they were going to give them some certain liters. I don't know if they're finally giving them. Where do we want to? Does the CBN still want to do developmental financing? Or the CBN wants to stick to its core position at the expense of businesses? Where should we stand?
I think the immediate past CBN administration overreached itself. You say there's what we say, jack of all trade.
Master of none.
Thank you. They did not just usurp the role of the Minister of Agriculture, they also usurped the role of Minister of Industries, Minister of Finance, Minister of Trade and Investment. So they became everything.
Even Ministry of Health?
Yes. They began to even dictate what should have been our trade policy and they embedded it into the central policies. Like the issue of banning 43 items. It's a trade policy. So, like I said, there was a lacuna in the executive administration of the country at that point. I don't think we should ever imagine that will happen again. The central bank should remain true and focus on its primary responsibilities. There's nothing that stops the central bank from engaging in development finance support. But there are development finance agencies that have been created. There's a Bank of Agriculture. There's a Bank of Industries. There's a
Export Bank.
Yeah, there's a Bank of Industries. Nexim. You have Nexim. You have Bank of Agriculture. So there's even a bank for infrastructure.
Yeah.
So if the central bank wants to support any of these development initiatives, it should fund them through the development finance institutions, and then it should arrange for a funders fund where it's not just the one funding, like what we have had in Afrexim, in Development Bank of Nigeria, where the central bank could be a partner in funding development or infrastructure, but it has to also attract other private sector funding. I don't think the central bank should go to the extent, okay, we are battling with the anchor borrower program. I'm sure you've been seeing that they've been asking them to pay back. And those people that collected the money thought that there was largesse.
Chief, we're about to round up now. We have just less than a minute. How do we save the Naira? I mean, I know, Les Leber, Mr. Daigofia, Ojo Maikre, they've been on this matter. Vanguard columnists, lead Vanguard columnists, they've all been on this subject for a very long time. How do we save this Naira? Because it looks like we will wake up one morning, Naira will be about 2,000 Naira to the dollar. So I was listening to you, but at the point I was beginning to doze off because my concern is this Naira.
Your pocket, eh? Talking about your personal finance. Okay, it's not a 1 minute answer, but I will tell you one of the things I've said consistently. We need to restore confidence in the local currency as a store of value and a medium of exchange, particularly a store of value. That has been eroded. How do we restore confidence? I hear this, Mr. Cardoso talk about clean areas of forward transactions. We need to go beyond that. We need to clear all arrears. Letters of credit have matured, payment due to the airlines, payment due to foreign portfolio investors who have come in. And to do that, the government must assess what I may call balance of payment support. We don't have that resource internally. If we continue to paper over this thing, like you said, we could get to 2009. We have almost become Zimbabwe. We must get access to funding from a third party that can help us clear those arrears. Probably arrange for a 20-year facility from IMF.
Concessional.
Yes, concessionary loan from IMF. Unfortunately, we could have put this forward. Would have put the condition they're going to give us now. What we have implemented would have put forward as conditions, accepted those conditions and gotten those money. But we've run ahead of our time, and we're not going to go cap in hand to them. But I think we must get funding to stabilize the exchange rate and clear those areas.
We don't end up like Ghana or Sri Lanka. Anyway, thank you very much. I, Chief Johnson Chukwu, for joining us.